Hi there, I'm Fred Trost. Welcome to Michigan Weekend. You know, it might be cold outside right now, but a lot of anglers I know are looking forward to spring, summer, and fall when they can get out fishing. We're going to have Stan Levency with us, who's going to show a young boy, a 10-year-old, how to catch bluegills on a fly rod during those spring spawning season. We're going to go fishing with Stan Levency also down in the Saugatuck area, the backwaters of the Kalamazoo River, where we're going to catch pike. Stan's going to show us how to do this with artificial lures, some techniques that are good in the spring or the fall. Stan's also going to take us in the Traverse City area, a private lake, show us some techniques to use for bass, and we're also going to have a recipe called Basic Bass. Michigan has a lot of mighty good fishermen, and one of the best is working for the Michigan Travel Bureau, Stan Levency. He probably knows more about catching more types of fish that we have here in Michigan than anybody I know. And one of the most popular types of fish is our panfish right here in the Great Lakes. Bluegill is probably the most popular fish. Some 36 million panfish, including bluegill, are caught every year. Stan Levency is going to show a 10-year-old boy, my son Zachary, how to catch bluegill on the fly rod in the spring. So let's join him.
Hey, Zach, we're on the shores of a southern Michigan lake at spawning time. You'll notice the saucer-shaped depressions out there. Those are bluegill beds. We're going to try catching these fly casting. I think the sponge rubber spider, which is a floating imitation, is probably as good as you can get for bluegills. Now, fly fishing is kind of an art. I think the thing what we'll do is just get you into it and criticize you as you go along. You're a lefty here, so hold the line with your right hand. You're going to do your casting with your left hand. I'm going to drop this fly. You just kind of ignore the fly, and you're going to try to cast the weight of the line. Now I'm going to help you from the start, just to give you a little feel. So what we do...
Zach couldn't have had a more experienced fisherman or accomplished fly caster as an instructor than Stan Levency. His patience and enthusiasm are both very helpful to young Zach.
On your line, pull in some more, bring it to your fingertips, drop the other. That's it. That's the way you're going to bring a fish in too. Oh, we're a little... All right, go ahead. Let her go. All right, cast it way out now if you can, and very good. The next time, though, you want to pause a little bit before you come in your forward cast. Try another one. You're not out quite far enough, even though there is a little sunfish down there. Beautiful. You're out there. Watch it now. Watch it. You're right in that area. You're right in the area. Give it a little life. A little life. Twitch it a little bit, then let her sit. Get ready if a fish takes. I don't see any takers yet. Now, our problem is that we're not getting the fly out far enough. The fish are seeing us and they're wary. So we've got to learn to cast a little bit further. Now, the whole secret of fly fishing is you hold this line here. What you're going to do is, let me just go through the motions. Cast up, stop, pause, and cast out. Okay? Get her coming, cast back, pause, and throw out. But the secret is you stop right above you, you pause a little bit, and then whoop her out forward. See how much further we got her? Now we're in a little bit more vulnerable area. Now let's see if we can't entice one of those. Oh, there's one between your fly and shore. See him? That's a sunfish. Maybe we can get him. Keep, that's it. Keep bringing your line in. Make it look alive. Make it look alive. That sunfish is liable to take. Watch it. Here he's coming up. He's coming closer. He's going to take. He's going to take. Oh, you took it away from him just a second too quick. That was a good try, though. All right, now we'll go after another one. I think we've got him scared. Let's get her out in that area there. Watch her now. We're in a new area.
A new fishing area always holds new anticipation and offers a new promise, no matter what fish you're going after. Zachary's fly casting technique has definitely improved, and he's reaching out far enough where the big bluegill lurk, guarding their spawning beds. You'd think that these two fishermen were going after 25-pound pike or 35-pound salmon the way they're so intent, but that's the way it is in the game of fishing. Concentration and skill, sooner or later, pays off. The big bluegill smashes the rubber spider and the battle is on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ooh, that's a beauty. Oh, that's a beauty. Rod high, rod high. Just have a lot of fun with him. You got him coming. Walk a little bit toward the lake. Toward the lake. There you are. Ooh, look at him go. Look at him go. Ooh, look at him go.
There's one over there. Look at him. There's a couple of them.
Yeah, there's a bass down there too. Look at those other ones following. They don't know what's going to... Oh, it's a bass that's following them. Oh, look at that bass chasing them. Okay, bring him in, old buddy. I think you got the fight out of him pretty much. We'll get a good look at him. Oh, that's a... Oh, you're not going to bring him in so easy. Oh, fine. Look at that thing.
A 9-inch bluegill is a real beauty. They don't often come that large in Michigan, although there are places like this one where the big ones do exist. Generally, it's private lakes where you'll find the larger gills. However, there are a number of bluegill each year that go over a pound that are caught in public waters. Doesn't take too many this size to make a dandy meal. Zach is quite eager to get that rubber spider back in the water. About an hour of fly fishing, and Zach has not only learned the basics of fly casting, but he's also caught himself 5 dandy bluegill, all of them about 9 inches long, 3/4 of a pound apiece. You can sometimes catch gills this size in public waters, but there's nothing like knowing somebody who can give you access to a private lake for consistent fishing like that. What a Michigan weekend that makes. And those Michigan weekends are coming up in May and June, not too far away right now, something to look forward to. Well, next, Stan Levense is going to take us for fishing for largemouth bass in a northern Michigan lake up around Traverse City. We're going to be back with that right after this message from Meyer. Although pan fishing is really popular in Michigan, another fish that's really popular and it's surprisingly to a lot of people, Michigan is a good state for largemouth bass. Right here, they're a real scrappy little fish. Stan Levense now is going to take us. He's going to be talking about fall techniques for bass, but they'll work equally as well in the spring.
Well, the main thing is I'm prepared in the fall for the day turning very, very warm and maybe an hour later getting very, very chilly. So I've got several bits of clothing along with me, from a light jacket or a loose sweater to a heavy jacket. A windbreak is always a very good thing to have along, and for footwear, it's best to have, I think, tennis shoes or a pair of sneakers with a rubber sole for bottom to keep the noise down to a minimum if you move around any. For largemouth bass, a 12-foot boat is ample. I think small boat fishing is by far the most fun going after the largemouth bass. Well, for largemouth bass, we want a mud bottom. We want quite a bit of vegetation. I think the giveaway is the fringed with lily pads, at least some areas of the lake. You look at it from two ways. One, you're either going to go underwater or you're going to go on the surface. Generally speaking, surface fishing is good in the evening and early morning, and I think it's by far the most fun because when they hit a surface lure, they explode, and it's a real exciting way to take bass. But during the day, they don't hit surface baits well, and generally go to the underwater type plugs, spinners, jigs, etc. Well, at this time of the year, we do know that the water temperature is reasonable on the shoal. And bass always will be on the shoal or next to it as long as the water temperature allows. Well, I'm talking in the weed-producing area of the lake, shallow water, probably 10 feet or less. So we can look for the bass to be up on the shoal under cover, maybe an old log, under lily pads, dense weed area, or along the edge. So we're casting where we feel the bass are going to hear or see the lure, and which is on the shore. Fortunately, with the import, you might say, of the spinning tackle, we can include all ages now. When I grew up, I learned to cast with a bait casting rod, and that was the way to cast for bass, was the way to catch them. And it took me 3-4 years to learn, to really be adept at it. But spinning is an easy technique to use, very simple to cast, and very effective, and you can cast with reasonable accuracy. There's some advantage, of course, to pinpoint accuracy that an older fellow might have, but no, you're really all set with spinning outfit, catching largemouth bass. I think it's most common to tie on a swivel snap and just interchange your lures with the swivel snap. Bass, you can get away with a little poundage in the line. Fortunately, with the reels today, you can use monofilament line so that about a 12-pound test allows you, if you get a hook or a lure into the weeds, to pull it free. It'll break a lily pad, it'll break a bulrush, and allow you to keep fishing. Whereas lighter line than that, you're allowed to break off and have to go hunt your lure out. As far as the largemouth bass are concerned, in the fall, they're pretty active right on through the day. It's not as urgent early morning and evening like it is in the summertime. Largemouth bass, of course, is a member of the sunfish family, and he gains interesting size in about 4 years as a rule, sometimes as early as 3 years. A lot depends on the abundance of fish in a lake and the amount of competition from vegetation. A lot of weeds, for instance, will, believe it or not, have a hold-up effect on growth of some of these fish. The largemouth bass lives about 6 years. Not some will go up as much as 8 or 10, but by and large, most of them don't live much more than 6 years. They feed very much on a variety of things. They're not all the minnow feeders that fishermen think they are. Crayfish are a very heavy part of their diet, as well as some of the insects. Well, the main thing is, I think you want to be satisfied with a reasonable size, but the main thing is a lot of activity during the day or during your fishing period. You like to not have too long a time between the strikes or bites. Largemouth bass is a good jumper and a good violent fighter for his shape and size, and he's a good challenge. It's a very gamey fish and a lot of fun to catch.
It is possible for you to catch a stringer of fish like this on a Michigan weekend, some nice bass with maybe a few bluegill mixed in. All it takes is a minimum of equipment, and following Stan Levense's expert advice is one good way to do it. Of course, what are you going to do with the bass when you get it home? Some people feel that bass are maybe sort of strong tasting at times. Well, generally, that's because of the water where they come from is weedy, slow-moving, or more stagnant type water almost. That'll give them sort of a strong flavor. But most bass you catch in Michigan in the cold, clear waters will be tasty, and here's an idea on how to fix them. For bass under 1 pound, you can either fillet them or clean and scale them for cooking. Now, they're tasty at this size, and they're so tasty that all you need to do is dip them in flour before frying. No seasoning necessary except for a little salt after they're fried. Now, for the larger bass that sometimes have a more definite taste if they're from weedy waters, cut the fillets into what Homer Circle calls thumb-sized chunks. Now, this is more of a southern bass recipe. You can tell by the buttermilk. We're going to soak the chunks in buttermilk while you're preparing the flour, which means adding a little seasoning salt. Dredge the chunks in the seasoned flour, and you're cooking. Bass is really good this way, especially our Michigan bass that comes from those cold, cool, clear lakes. This is a simple recipe, and something you can do after catching bass on a Michigan weekend. Boy, is that tasty. And we're going to be right back with some pike fishing. Go after the bigger fish, the more exciting fish even, at least in some people's estimation, after this message. When we're talking about big fish that fight a lot of people think immediately of the salmon, but Michigan has an awful lot of northern pike and good pike lakes. Now, Stan Levense's job at the Michigan Travel Bureau is to promote Michigan's fishing and hunting, so he's going to tell us about pike fishing, some techniques that are especially good in the fall, while Rick Hirschner, sporting goods dealer from Douglas, joins us on our pike fishing trip to the Kalamazoo River.
Michigan has really a great abundance of lakes with northern pike, especially since we've had the high water level that we've enjoyed for so many years. Every lake can be a pike lake except for spawning, and I think that's the key. You look for spawning area. Once you find a lake that has an inlet stream, for instance, or even an outlet stream that has a lot of marsh land connected with it, you can pretty much assume, and I'm talking marshland now, like a lot of cattails, a lot of bulrushes, a lot of, in the springtime, floody, grassy areas. This is pike spawning area. And when you see a lot of pike spawning area, you can just assume the pike are there. The Department of Natural Resources has put in a lot of pike spawning marshes and furthered the management of pike. So Michigan really has a superabundance of pike lakes. Well, when you're pike fishing in the fall, it can get very chilly, and the winds can really whip at you and get chilled. So really, you want a good heavy jacket available and you want a good windbreak. I personally prefer to use a little heavier monofilament. I will go up to 20-pound test monofilament if I anticipate the possibility of, say, a 15, 20, 25-pound northern pike, and without wire leader. I do think that wire leaders cut down your opportunities of catching pike. There are times that the monofilament can go across in their mouth and cut those, and those teeth are very sharp and will cut. But talking to the big musky, big pike fishermen, by and large, they do not recommend the usual wire leader. Pike are very much fish eaters. Their diet is pretty heavy on fish, and for this reason, the minnow imitating lures, the fish imitating lures are all good. The most usual is a good spoon, and naturally, most spoons are not weedless, and so you cast into the pockets where there are no weeds or along the edge, or troll those areas. And it's always a good idea, if they are really up in the weeds, you may want to give this a try. It's a good idea to have some weedless lures along with you. The safety pin type of lures, for instance, dodge the weeds in pretty good shape. The old Johnson silver minnow is a pretty good weedless type. So a good weedless spoon is good to have along. There's every advantage in pike to have a pretty stout rod. Actually, a cue stick stiffness is not a bad quality in a rod, except that it's a little difficult to cast accurately if you get too stiff. So there you have to kind of compromise. A leisure retrieve sometimes will take them, but surprisingly, I can say this, that you cannot wind fast enough sometime, and pike will hit that very, very fast retrieve. You'd think that you could wind that lure in so fast that no fish would be able to take it, but when a pike wants it, he gets it, and he hits it with a jolt. So if the water isn't too cold, fast retrieve is a very good way, especially. This is a technique for getting the larger pike. Pike are very much followers, and like they're trying to decide whether or not to hit. And the idea is that if you fast retrieve, you don't give them a chance to think, and they have to sock it now or they lose it, and so they sock it. The northern pike are not a smart fish like trout, for instance. Their main attribute is their brute power at times, and with the innovation of spinning again, the amateur, the guy just coming into the fishery, as long as he's got a good stout spinning rod or casting rod, he can handle the fish and he can get action. The pike are kind of a temperamental thing. That's the main thing. You have to hit the right timing sometimes, but you don't have to cast accurately, get it over in the general area, and if they're there and they're active at that moment, they're going to hit the beginner as well as the experienced.
Well, there's no doubting that when the pike are ready, they'll hit for the beginner as well as for the expert, but there's also the other side of the coin. If they're not ready, you can throw every lure in the book at them, and they're not going to hit for the beginner or the expert. Why, this day we even tried using sucker minnows next to the weeds. We trolled off the weed beds. But nothing we did on this day could raise a fish, not a thing, not a nibble. And that probably sounds like some fishing trips that you're well acquainted with. Well, there's really not too much you can do except enjoy being outdoors, enjoy the company, fish hard, and of course set a date to try it again, which we did. We went back on the backwaters and the bayous of the Kalamazoo River, a little different areas than we fished before. We used the same techniques, but it just so happened that the pike were hungry and cooperative.
Big fun is in the violent fight. I'll say this for the pike. When they attack a lure, they really attack. And I think this is the most exciting part, is the viciousness of the initial attack of a pike. They're not acrobats, and yet they can be. They can be acrobatic. I've seen pike take a good leap in the air and try to toss a bait like a bass, but it's not common, you're right. Their main fight is quick dashes here, there, and back, and one of the very intimate little techniques is suddenly rushing the boat and going right underneath. And I would say a lot of poles are broke at this point because the fishermen don't get the pole to the end of the boat right away and swing around the end of the boat. And this is when poles will really break, so that any pike fisherman has to be aware of the fact they may run the boat. It's the real cannibal. It's the real vicious predator. For pike, it can attain very large sizes, so I'm sure that this is one species where the fishermen go and look for a lunker and hope for a lunker.
Well, today Stan Levenson and Rick Hirschner pulled through like the experienced fishermen they both are and came up with a string of 5-pound pike that any fisherman would be proud to take home. No real lunkers by trophy standards, but a good string of northern pike, which is something you could go after and probably catch on a Michigan weekend this fall. And those same techniques really would work just as good in the spring. You ought to get out very soon after the ice goes out and try it. May 15th is the date. We'll be right back with more Michigan Weekend after this message from the Sporting Goods Department at Meijer. Join me next week for Michigan Weekend, when we will be taking that trip to the Upper Peninsula of the Sylvania Tract. We'll find out what it's like to camp up there in that wilderness area, and we'll see some 3- and 4-pound smallmouth bass that are just incredible. Great fighters, great to catch, a lot of fun. So join me, won't you, next week right here for Michigan Weekend.